Hello everyone, my name is Ramon and today I'm going to be presenting trafficking in teenage girls. Sex trafficking for sexual or exploitation is one of the largest criminal enterprises in the world. 96% of these victims are women and girls. In other countries, they still believe that it is legally and socially acceptable to treat women and girls as though they are merchandise. In the United States, however, it is ultimately the victims that are in this 90%, 96%, a lot of them are in the United States. Today, however, I am focusing on the teenage girls, and the average age of entry for these young girls are 13 years old. The FBI states that over 100,000 victims enter into sex trafficking, and there are ages, they start from ages 19 and they start from ages 9 and go up to 19. The type of victims that normally come into sex trafficking are runaways. Actually, 75% of victims are teenage girls who ran away from home. Other victims could be those that were abducted from different places, like, their house. One victim was abducted right outside of her house. Others are in larger areas as malls. These predators, the way how they get to their victims is by manipulation. Once they have found a need that these victims had, they prey on that need and they connect that to that emotion. And once they connect to that emotions, that's one of the traffickers lure these teenage girls into sex trafficking. As mentioned before, most of these victims are runaway victims, and the type of trauma that teenage girls face today can range from sexual abuse. Some of them come from poverty. Some of them are being physically abused in school. Some of them are bullied. They face a lot of trauma. So there are many other things, or many other reasons why some of these victims run away from home. But what the point is that I'm trying, victims have a need, and once these perpetrators, or traffickers I should say, once they find the need, they prey on that need, and that's when the recruitment process starts. Not only do the traffickers actually go out there, these are normally grown men, are ranging from ages 20 up to 60 something years old. So normally they'll do it, or what they also do is use their other victims as methods to lure these teenage girls in. So other teenagers older than them will go out and they will lure these girls in. One across, the way how she was brought into it was by another young lady telling her that she would take her to a place where she can have fun and she can do all of this, and that's where she was introduced to her trafficker. So once they get past the recruitment process, or should I say the initiation process, where they convince you that they are going to give you the things that you were lacking of at home. They're going to give you love. They're going to give you affection. They're going to give you protection. They're going to provide for you financially. Once they get you past that part, these teenagers have now formed an attachment to their trafficker. Now they introduce sexual advances. You have to start doing me a favor, or you have to start working for me. And that's one of the ways that the sexual exploitation is introduced to these young ladies. Now, obviously, most of them are reluctant. And once the psychological tie has started, they believe that they have no other choice. Now, any type of resistance should take place. Violence is definitely one tactic that's used. So these girls are beaten on a regular basis and they're raped on a regular basis. One female, young female that I came across in a testimonial, she was raped by over 40 guys in one day. Intimidation, obviously, as I mentioned, is one of the strongest thing that they use in the initiation process. They don't have to actually physically hit you. Once they can get to you with threats of humiliation, threats that I'm going to kill your family or I'm going to kill you, just saying that you're not going to survive without me, basically, that physical, those threats and things like that get to these young ladies, and that's how the initiation process begins, and that's how they ended up staying into the sex trade for as long as they are. Because I have even learned through this research that a lot of these young ladies are not being held by chains and are held in a box or something. They're walking around, they're free, but in their mind, they're mentally enslaved to their traffickers. These young ladies are into the business. The way how they're usually sold is through websites. They put you up on these websites that you have to kind of, I don't know, go in and find. And when I was researching the type of websites, I saw that Backpage was one of them. And in this website, basically, they put up this and they put how much they're being sold for, and that's how it these perpetrators, these predators who are out there, they get to these girls and they're sold. And usually the prices range from like 150 for an hour and things like that. And sometimes in one weekend, from one girl, they can make up to $4,000 just on one. Now, as I said before, these victims, they didn't come into the world thinking that they were going to be sold. Their bodies were going to be sold for sex. These girls had dreams, they had other aspirations. So, although the psychological effects of sex trafficking or from these traffickers are strong, there comes a point, I like to say that they reach their breaking point. So some of the things that I came across is that a lot of these victims, after they reach their breaking point, sometimes it's through a child. Some of them end up having children, and that child is able to give them that, I need to protect my child, so I'm going to get away from this lifestyle. Because as I said, after years and years of being it, they're not being held under a chain or anything like that. So even though they're not, the psychological effects I think I mentioned earlier are still strong. So for them to get away from sex trafficking or get away from their trafficker is not an easy process, and it's not something that they can do alone. And so that's where these organizations and these advocates and people like me come in to help these girls get away from this lifestyle. So for these teenage girls, the help that they can get from these officers are like task forces like anti-trafficking coordinations and the human trafficking task force. These are different investigators who, they are of the law, but they're a special task force that only specializes in going in and getting these girls out of. So as mentioned before, these girls do get an opportunity to break free from this, whether they run away, whether it's the help from the task forces, whether it's a community person just like me. These victims are able to break free and to run away from their traffickers and to leave that lifestyle. To be rehabilitated into this, to back regular society, they're going to need help. And so one of the effects that comes from this is that they end up developing different mental disorders such as PTSD and anxiety disorders. Some of them become suicidal because, this is the only lifestyle they knew. They have a long road to go before they're fully rehabilitated back into a regular lifestyle. So that's where we come in. That's where people who have set up these safe houses for these young ladies, that's where we come in to do it, to help, because this is not something that these young ladies can do alone. Show them what love is and what it means to live in a functional society where you're not having to be held under captivity. So there are numerous organizations in the United States that cater to these girls. Some that I wanted to mention, such as Living Waters, where they house these girls, these teenage girls in Atlanta. And you have some like For Sarah, where she goes around, she makes it, that's what she does every day to educate. Her job is to educate others about sexual trafficking and exploitation. And the reason why she's able to do so is because she was once in that position. what I was saying about these organizations is that they're catered and they're passionate to the cause of helping rehabilitate these girls. But unfortunately, even though a lot of these girls have been saved and are safe now from human trafficking, we still have a number of victims who are still being affected by it today. So, what we can do as a community is just to be more aware of our surroundings. I think I can't stress it enough that we need to educate ourselves about what's really going on. So, I may have babbled a little bit in this presentation, but I hope I was able to share some outlooks on the things that are happening with these young girls, and mainly just the psychological effects and what causes them to fall into sex trafficking. And for of our society, be aware of our people, the people that we love, our loved ones, and not just your loved ones, but just these girls. They're out here, they're alone, and they need us. And I hope I was able to give more